Right now, somewhere over the Strait of Hormuz, a 50-year-old airplane is doing a job that 2 aircraft carriers, 60 warships, and $1 trillion of modern military technology could not do on its own. It is not a stealth bomber. It is not an F-35. It is not a drone. It is a plane that looks like it was designed by someone who had never heard the word elegant. A wide, ugly, slow-flying machine that the United States Air Force has been trying to kill for 20 years. A plane Congress saved over and over again against the explicit wishes of the Pentagon. A plane that military planners called obsolete, outdated, and irrelevant to modern warfare. Iran just proved every one of those planners wrong. By the end of this video, you will fully understand what this aircraft actually is, why the Air Force spent 2 decades trying to retire it, why every piece of modern technology the Navy brought to the Strait of Hormuz could not solve the problem it solved in days, why the decision to keep this plane alive against every expert's recommendation turned out to be the single most important budget decision made in the last decade of American military history, and why the lesson hidden inside this story tells you something about modern warfare that no general wants to admit out loud. Let us start with the problem this plane was called in to solve. Because understanding why it worked requires understanding why everything else failed first. When the United States destroyed Iran's conventional navy in 39 days, American planners expected the Strait of Hormuz to become manageable. The big warships were gone. The submarines were gone. The command structure was shattered. What remained, the thing nobody had fully planned for, was Iran's fast attack boat fleet. Not 10 boats, not 50, hundreds. Small fiberglass and composite craft, most under 15 tons, running at 50 to 70 knots. Faster than most Coast Guard vessels, cheaper than most family cars, each one carrying an anti-ship missile with a 35-kilometer range. These boats did not fight like a navy. They fought like a swarm, 30 to 50 of them launching simultaneously from different directions, from different distances, from positions mixed in with civilian fishing traffic that radar cannot distinguish from a combat vessel at speed. Iran built this doctrine specifically around a 2002 Pentagon war game where a single retired Marine general used swarm boats to sink 16 American warships in simulation. The Pentagon was so embarrassed by the result that they restarted the exercise and changed the rules. Iran watched that simulation and spent the next 20 years building a navy designed to recreate it. Now here is where it gets really interesting. The United States Navy arrived at the Strait of Hormuz with the most advanced surface fleet ever assembled. 2 aircraft carrier strike groups, guided missile destroyers carrying 96 missiles each, cruisers, submarines, every category of modern warship. And those warships ran directly into a math problem they were never designed to solve. A guided missile fired from an American destroyer costs $5.3 million. The speedboat it is aimed at costs $50,000. That is a ratio of over 100 to 1 in Iran's favor. Fire enough missiles and the destroyer runs out before the speedboats do. A carrier-based F-18 Super Hornet crosses the shipping lane at over 500 knots. At that speed, in that environment, distinguishing an armed Revolutionary Guard boat from a Kuwaiti fishing trawler is not possible in the seconds available. The jets were too fast. The helicopters assigned to the destroyers were too small. The missiles were too expensive. Every tool the modern Navy brought to this fight was either the wrong size, the wrong speed, or the wrong price. The Strait of Hormuz has a 6-mile navigable shipping lane. Normal traffic is over 130 ships per day. With fast boats operating in that corridor, every tanker captain was looking at a choice between waiting outside and losing $3 million a day in delayed deliveries, or entering a lane where a $50,000 boat could appear from anywhere and put a missile into the hull before any response was possible. The blockade was in place, the Navy was on station, the mines were being cleared, and the fast boat problem had no solution. That is when the Pentagon called in the plane. Stop and think about what that plane actually is. Because most people who follow military news have heard of it, but have never understood why it is different from everything else the American military flies. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, known universally as the Warthog, is not a normal aircraft. It was not designed to look impressive. It was not designed for air-to-air combat. It was not designed for the kind of war the Air Force spent the last 30 years preparing to fight. It was designed around a single object, a gun, the most powerful gun ever put on an airplane. The gun came first. The airplane was built around it. That is not a figure of speech. Engineers at General Electric designed the GU-8 Avenger rotary cannon first. Then the airframe team at Fairchild Republic designed the aircraft around the place the gun needed to sit. The result is a plane that looks like someone strapped wings to an artillery piece and added a cockpit as an afterthought. The GAU-8 fires 30mm rounds at 3,900 rounds per minute. Each round is roughly the size of a wine bottle. The gun fires so fast that the sound it makes is not a bang or a burst. It is a mechanical belch. A single 1-second trigger pull sends 65 rounds downrange. Each round can penetrate the top armor of a main battle tank. Against a fiberglass speedboat, the effect is not damage, it is erasure. The cost to destroy a fast attack boat with this weapon is under $10,000. That is a 500-to-1 cost advantage over a destroyer's guided missile. In a war where the core problem is a cost ratio working against you, this aircraft flipped the equation entirely. There is another angle that almost nobody is talking about. The A-10 flies at 300 knots. That sounds slow for a military aircraft, and it is. It is slow on purpose. At 300 knots, at 3,000 feet above the water, a pilot can actually see what is on the surface below, identify the target, and make a decision before the moment has passed. An F-18 at 500 knots sees the same stretch of water in a fraction of a second. The A-10 pilot sees it for 3 full seconds. In a strait full of civilian fishing boats and commercial traffic, 3 seconds is the difference between a legitimate engagement and an international incident. The Warthog also carries a titanium bathtub around the cockpit. Not a metaphor. An actual bathtub made of titanium that can absorb direct hits from 23mm rounds without killing the pilot. Iran's fast boats do not carry anti-aircraft systems capable of defeating this protection. The plane was built to fly through the kind of fire those boats can generate and keep functioning. Think about what that means. The Air Force wanted to retire this aircraft because it cannot survive in contested airspace against a modern air defense system. Iran's fast boats are not a modern air defense system. Against speedboats in a narrow waterway, the vulnerabilities that made the Warthog obsolete in high-tech warfare became irrelevant, and the capabilities that made it unique became decisive. Around March 19th, A-10 Warthogs began flying patrols over the strait alongside Army AH-64 Apache helicopters operating from floating forward bases in the Gulf. For the first time in this war, 3 branches of the American military were operating simultaneously over a single 6-mile corridor. The A-10 flew at 3,000 feet hunting fast boats. The Apaches flew at 200 feet, picking off anything that slipped through. Navy destroyers maintained the air defense umbrella above both. The fast boats started dying faster than Iran could replace them. The cost per engagement dropped from millions to thousands. The problem that had no solution had a solution. It was 50 years old, and the Air Force had been trying to kill it for 2 decades. Now here is where this starts affecting people who have never heard of the A-10 and have no interest in military aviation. Before the Warthog arrived in theater, the fast boat threat was keeping the Strait of Hormuz at single-digit ship traffic. 5 to 7 vessels per day were getting through a waterway that normally handles 130, oil above $110 per barrel. Goldman Sachs called it the largest oil supply shock in recorded history. Every truck delivering food to every grocery store in the country running on diesel priced against that market. Every American paying more for gas, more for groceries, more for everything shipped by road or sea. The moment the fast boat problem was resolved is the moment the economic bleeding stopped accelerating. Not ended. Stopped accelerating. The mines are still there. The toll booth is still there. But the thing that was actively attacking commercial vessels in the world's most important shipping lane was neutralized by a plane that cost $19 million. For comparison, a single F-35 costs $82 million. 20 F-35s cannot do what one A-10 did in this specific environment. This is where the conversation fundamentally changes. The United States military has spent the last 30 years preparing for one kind of war: a high-technology confrontation against a peer adversary with advanced radar, advanced missiles, and advanced aircraft. Every major weapons program of the last 3 decades was designed for that war. The F-22, the F-35, the Zumwalt destroyer, the littoral combat ship, the next-generation ground vehicle. All of it optimized for a conflict against China or Russia in an environment where the enemy can track and target American platforms at long range with precision weapons. Iran is not China. Iran is not Russia. Iran is a country that built its military strategy around cheap, simple weapons used in large numbers in a specific geographic choke point. Mines that cost $1,500, speedboats that cost $50,000, internet cables that can be cut with a tool from any hardware store. And the American military, with $900 billion in annual defense spending, was caught in a moment where its most advanced systems could not solve the problem, and a 50-year-old plane that costs less than a house in California could. The Air Force tried to retire the A-10 in 2012. Congress blocked it. They tried again in 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2019, 2021, and 2024. Every time, Congress overrode the Pentagon's recommendation. The official military argument was always the same: the A-10 cannot survive in a contested environment. It is too slow, too vulnerable, too limited. The money is better spent on fifth-generation aircraft. Every one of those arguments was true for the war the Pentagon was preparing to fight. Not one of them applied to the war Iran actually started. There is one more thing that deserves your full attention. The A-10 is currently scheduled to be fully retired by 2030. The replacement being developed to take over its close air support mission is the F-35, an aircraft that costs 4 times as much, flies twice as fast, carries a smaller gun, and carries ammunition for fewer than 3 seconds of sustained fire at the A-10's rate. The aircraft designed to replace the Warthog cannot do what the Warthog just did. The decision being made right now, in budget meetings in Washington, where nobody is discussing what happened in the Strait of Hormuz, is whether to continue that retirement on schedule. The generals who want to retire, it will use the same arguments they have always used. The arguments are still technically correct for the war they are planning to fight. They remain completely silent on the war that just happened. So here is the question that matters. The United States spent 20 years and $900 billion per year building a military optimized for a war against China or Russia. Iran fought a completely different war, using cheap weapons in a narrow waterway, and the only American system that solved the core problem was a 50-year-old plane that the Pentagon has been trying to scrap for 2 decades. Does that mean American defense spending is fundamentally misaligned with the threats America actually faces? Or does it mean that the A-10 is the exception, a Cold War accident that happened to be useful one more time before the real war with China makes it completely irrelevant? One side says the Warthog just proved that America's next war will be won with old, cheap, purpose-built tools, and that the F-35 is the most expensive mistake in military history. The other side says the A-10 got lucky with one specific enemy in one specific environment, and that banking on it for the next conflict is how you lose everything. Write which side you are on in the comments, because the people who say cheap and old beats expensive and modern, and the people who say the A-10 era is over, are about to have the most important argument on this channel. And if you have not seen our video on how Iran locked the world's most important shipping lane and then lost the key, the reason the Strait of Hormuz is still closed months after the shooting stopped, make sure to watch that one next.